It's great to be here, Garber. You and I have, and we'll chat more as we go. But I love your love for the sport. I love that we share the love for the sport, and it's one of those lines that I always think about. And maybe I'll even share later on. It's a quote that I love. Is as you get older, it's good to know people who knew you when you were young.
Mm.
At least you knew me when I was a 17-year whippersnapper, and you were 24.
Well, I gotta bring that up.
That's good.
I love it.
Fortunate.
100%. I love that quote. That's perfect.
Yeah.
And obviously after college, we all kind of went our own direction, and you've kind of found your passion in kind of helping communities, in different parts of the world with healthcare and just overall, just whether it's physical therapy, what you've done in Guatemala, and we can dive deep into that too. But my question, to start is, kind of you have done all this stuff, you worked all the world. What originally kind of like inspired you to do what you are doing now, and kind of how you got there, and branching off of that, diving in a little bit deeper into like, what Fit Health is, and what your vision is for it.
Yeah, sounds good. And two of the main projects that I'm part of right now is Fit Health and Move Together. And
Hmm.
they're similar and they sort of come under this sort of vocational mission that I've sort of synthesized for my life. Maybe I'll share that at the outset. And that mission is to catalyze well-being. And each of those two words for me pack punch. When I think about the word catalyze, it means the planting of sustainable seeds. So coming alongside others, whether as a coach, as a healthcare clinician, as a teacher, coming alongside others to plant seeds that you may water with them. Well, the whole idea is that they'll take the journey further, that they'll water it through their journey, and hopefully will yield and manifest fruits and fruit that pertain to their life. So that's the catalyzing, the planting of sustainable seeds. Well-being, the way I define well-being, is a state of content while striving, right? Not complacency, a state of contentment while striving. Like you sort of aware, I am where I am right now. For all the decisions or things that I did or did not do, this is my current reality. Okay. And that contentment is a sort of this awareness of your reality with grace. And when I think about striving, striving speaks to the ability that there's to tap into the potential that is within and around you. Whether you're just starting out as a sport or just starting your movement health journey is a term that I use a lot as a physical therapist. We
Mm.
all, whether you're Michael Jordan or the other end of the spectrum, or Usain Bolt, we all have potential within us to tap within. So if you could sort of have that dance, the world as it is, your health as it is, your health as it may be, a lot of the adventure lives in between those 2 points.
Hmm.
Um, so to answer your original question, so to catalyze well-being, healthcare, maybe some of the story starts with healthcare, right? So my mom was a nurse growing up, and that was always inspiring for me. So I always thought I was going to get into healthcare. I always knew rather I was going to get into healthcare in some capacity, whether it was medicine or sports medicine or what became eventually physical therapy. So I was just on that trajectory and that path from a very young age. But in terms of some of the service work and some of the global nature of the work that I've done, that I continue to do, that I've been thinking about lately about what the next steps look like, to use movement health as a force for good or catalyzing ripples around the world. Good amount of it started. We can even speak to our time at UMass in some aspects, and I'll talk the grad school. I think about it, a guy like Coach Greg Canella, our coach. He's a steward. He's one that serves with a sort of authenticity. There's this line that I heard many years ago that I've always loved. Because one of the best things a leader could do for his people or his team, his or her people or his team, is care about them. It show them that he cares about them. You know how to do that by actually caring about them.
Mm.
you know, and coaches that, right?
Yeah.
Poured so much into us. He planted sustainable seeds. He may have coached myself a certain way, you a certain way, another certain way, always sort of imputed in us or promoted or engaged with us in what we needed. I was doing a talk a couple of years ago, and coaches in the audience, and I sort of brought up a reference. You know how we used to do those sprints, those 200 and 300 and 400 yards. Yeah,
Oh yeah.
notably, my senior year, I really pushed myself, especially I changed positions a little bit. A goalie that used to chill, all right, a little bit, being in the field. I really pushed myself conditioning, and those 300 and 400, I pushed myself to either be leading it on the front of the pack. And not only that, you know how we'll sort of morning runs will be on the line, coach will be
Mhm.
on one end, just grilling everybody. And I said, yeah, I'm gonna be right in the middle where I know coach is gonna be, so he knows I ain't hiding. But we'll start the sprints. We'll go the 100, the 200, 300, 400, and almost without fail, at least once or twice in the runs each day, again, me leading the group, or in the front end, I'd be in a turn, coach right there, and coach would be like, come on, let's go. And that's so beautiful. That's so beautiful for him always seeing that within ourselves that we sometimes see. And without fail, I'd hit the nos.
Yeah.
A little bit of a boost. So that stewardship has been I took a lot of that with me,
Mm.
along with some other steps along the road, and getting a chance to collaborate with good friends like you and other teammates. And we all had our different forms of leadership. I loved your form of leadership. Oftentimes your form of authenticity, being intentional with your word, leading by example, things of that nature. So you're always observing other people, how they're leading, and trying to absorb those things in the future. I went to grad school in the University of Scranton, and that had a big effect on my vocational work, or what my vocational work is right now. Scranton's a Jesuit university, and the Jesuits, Brett, there's the founder of the Jesuits, the guy named Saint Ignatius Loyola, and he's a founder in the 1400s and such. And he had this line that's so powerful, that's beautiful. The line is "Ite inflammate omnia." At least this line is attributed to him. "Ite inflammate omnia" is Latin for "Go set the world on fire."
Mm.
Go set the world alight. And from the first times that I saw that, the first week or two of campus, that stirred something within my soul, and it was a great experience. And a few things happened that started to form me during my 3 years there. One of the things I would do, I would start towards the end of my first year, and you're getting your doctorate in physical therapy. It's a DPT, clinical doctorate. It's a 3-year program. Towards the end of my first year, I started consistently going to mass every day. And not only would I go to mass, I would get up to the lectern and do the first reading. And I like to say it gave me a chance to find my voice through God's words. And that had a really big impact on me. And it gave me the chance to develop some relationships with some of the different priests and some of the different fathers. And I'll share two sort of anecdotes, and I'll sort of reset, let me know where you want to go with it. But two anecdotes from Scranton. One main anecdote. Well, one I'll talk about Father Terry. He was at BC, Boston College, and Scranton. They went back to Boston College. He always had a great line or great quote about something. We had some good talks. But one thing that sticks out, Father Terry, once either in a direct talk with me, or in a mass, he was talking about this nun, this sister that he knew over the years. And in her office, she always had these pictures or models or drawings of hands, throughout her office. And one day, Father Terry goes, sister, what's with all the hands? And she goes to him, "I want to go to heaven with my hands full. I want to go to heaven with my hands full." And I've always loved that. I've always loved that. And that stayed within my heart. There's another priest, his name was Father Tim Cadigan, and he was great. He became a mentor of mine of sorts. So the anecdote that I'll share was, fast forward to the last day of PT school after 3 years. So the car's packed, graduation was over. My favorite car of all time, still my red 1997 Mercury Mountaineer. I love that car. It was packed up, and I was ready to drive back up to New York. But as I was in the driving seat, Brett, my foot was on the pedal, and I realized I couldn't push it. It wouldn't go. It was like something was sort of saying, it's not ready to go either. There's still a conversation you need to have. And in that conversation, it was like, you need to talk to Father Tim. You need to talk to Father Cadigan. So I texted or called Father Cadigan, Father Tim, say, "Father Tim, we got to talk." And he said, "All right, come on into the rectory where their office is." And we go and we sit down, Brett. And we're sitting down facing each other in the same way, and that we're facing each other now. And I start opening up to Father Tim. I go, "Father Tim, after 3 years of PT school and studying and library and internships and rotations and all this stuff, after 3 years of physical therapy school, I still have questions. Is this what I'm supposed to do with my hands and my heart and my words, and where am I supposed to do it, and how, and dare I say why?" And he had a background in the sciences. He was on his path to be a physician before he became a Jesuit priest. And he goes, "Efosa," yeah, he gave me these so many reassuring words. He goes, "Efosa, physical therapy is a healing profession, one in which you'll have the chance to use your hands and your heart and your words, and one I think you'd be good at." And he said some other things. But one thing, Brett, I won't forget, he said, that I won't ever forget. So he asked me to stand up, and we walked over to the wall. And on this wall was this painting of mountains and valleys. And he directed my gaze to it. He goes, Efosa, you see those mountains, you see those valleys, go there. Climb the heights of those mountains, search the depths of those valleys, go live your life, go maximize your passion. It was exactly what I needed to do. So that was the foundation of somewhat to come, but I'll pass you the baton back.
Yeah, no, that's great. And it's a great kind of, story to kind of get that background there. And, it just, knowing you and, obviously we've stayed in touch and we've done some ventures together. You noted about earlier about the PT day of service, like about physical therapy and, but that's something that's turned from being something that's kind of a little bit more local to global, right? I mean, the amount of people that your group has touched and you've connected with, and probably the amount of lives you've changed through it. Can you dive a little bit deep into that, building off that physical therapy and how that is, healing people and kind of how that is kind of part of what you're doing right now?
Yeah, with pleasure. Yeah, so there's sort of two areas of my life right now. FFITT Health, which I'll touch on later, and PTD of Service last moved together. So the PTD of Service journey, Brett, has been an interesting one I feel just lucky to be a part of. I did a trip around the world about a decade ago,
Mm.
which changed my life, and I'll plan to share one of the sort of experiences and moments in which it did. But during that trip, the countries I went to 22 countries in 8 months. And the countries that I went to were Guatemala, Costa Rica, Ecuador, Peru, Nigeria, Italy, Spain, France, England, Holland, Germany, Czech Republic, Austria, Hungary, Singapore, China, Japan, South Korea, Thailand, Indonesia, Australia, and New Zealand. So I like to say I went east into the rising sun. It was a great experience. The whole idea is to create this mosaic and montage of health, service, physical therapy around the world, get a sense about differences, those similarities, and the beauty that live within there. And Brett, I felt a lot. I learned a lot. I was able to participate in some. It was great. One of my stops in Peru, I was in a place called Iquitos, Peru, and Iquitos, Peru is right on the Amazon River, and you could only get there by boat or by plane. And I was doing a project there, and this one day while I was on a boat to another project, while I was in this sort of area, this idea for this initiative that had sort of been in the back of my mind for some time suddenly shot to the front of it. And the idea was this: what if we challenge students, staff, clinicians, the physical therapy profession around the corner and around the world to do an active service on the same day? And then what if not only that, we ask those same people to share the moments made and the bonds had with the world at large, by uploading a hashtag and sharing photos. What would that mean for the profession and our connectivity? What would that mean for the profession and how the world sees us and thinks of us? And it was a fledgling or nascent or very sort of shivering idea, vulnerable idea, dare I say, but it was sort of strengthening in my mind throughout that day. Came back, I emailed a really good friend of mine about the idea, and his response to it was just super strong and super positive. So we ended up co-founding this initiative. We called one friend and some other friends. We put together a team of clinicians around the world. That first year was just 10 clinicians, and we got the initiative started, PT Day of Service. And we said to ourselves, if even us 10 and some of our family members participate, that'd be pretty neat. That'd be pretty cool. The whole idea of finding a need right where you live. You don't have to travel. Right where you live, discern where they maybe need, and do your best to meet those needs per your capacity and capability. That's the whole idea: local impact for a global effect. Even just 10, 20 people participate, that'd be pretty neat. That first year, we had participants in all 50 states, and we had 26 countries participate. And then it built up each year to 45 countries in that year participate, and then 55, et cetera, et cetera. Till up to this year, we've had 90 different countries participate, and it's up to 90 participate. And it's been super neat because it just is done so many things. It's bringing PTs in their communities closer to their community. It's actually providing value. People do things like cleaning up a park bench, or doing movement health screens, or doing bike fittings, or running a 5K to raise money for a local fund, and things of that nature. And it's been really one of those unique things that have brought the profession together, and hopefully have catalyzed ripples in communities. And we're entering our 11th year right now, and again, just glad to be a part of it.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. And it's just, I follow stuff on social and I still stay connected to it a lot. And it just seems like you guys are growing and growing on that front, right? You're getting more people involved. And I think that's just something that's so kind of, unique and special to, have this idea and then just see it, kind of take off and see where it's going. And then did that, if correct me if I'm wrong, but did that lead you to your path into Guatemala, where you would start the initiative to try to get, more therapy, more healthcare down that part of the world?
Yeah, yeah, it didn't necessarily lead, but they're intertwined now. And now PTDF service is part of an ecosystem for some of the work that we're doing. So
Hmm.
my arc on that, when I was in PT school, I had the beautiful chance to go down to Guadalajara, Mexico. So we're talking the January of 2008 and such. And it was pretty neat. I went down there with some classmates and some professors. We did some things alongside some local students, and we participated in some different things, some local centers and some local hospitals. And I learned a lot, some of the unique ways healthcare is practiced down in Mexico. They had some unique and really very high quality and functioning facilities and things of that nature. So I learned a lot of good things that I've carried with me. The community aspect of healthcare that you sometimes will see in that country, like to the point that they're in the treatment, the whole family's in a treatment room together. And I also saw some of the challenges in the country, some of the same challenges that we'll see in our country as well. And it led me to a lot of questions. There's some inspirations and this that nature, but a lot of questions. And when I came back, I by the end of that project, I knew multiplied again with going to a Jesuit university. And there's many different themes in the Jesuit ecosystem, but one thing is being men and women for others. Being women and women for others, and a sort of a healthcare particular one is what we call curis personalis, seeing the whole person. So that led me to really be thinking about service locally where I was in Scranton. And then when I went to my first job, I had the beautiful chance to go to Cali, Colombia, with a great organization led by a spinal surgeon out of Chicago. Amazing guy. His name is Tony Ranella, and I learned a lot from him about sustainability and collaboration with those on the ground. When I came back from that project, the leaders of our company, great mentors of mine, a guy named Dylan Bates, a guy named Brett Mack, Dr. Chris Stout, one of my main mentors in my life till this day. They gave me the green light to create an organization within that company. And I did. So over the course of 3 or 4 years, it's a pretty big company. Over the course of 3 or 4 years, I would recruit my colleagues throughout the company, around the country, to collaborate with NGOs and nonprofits around the world with different missions, doing work in different places. And we would go down and be part of the mission of another NGO. And it was super unique. I learned a lot. Some of the most I learned was as just observing and asking questions of the leaders of these organizations and having conversations with them. So fast forward a little bit more directly to your question. Once I got back from that trip around the world, PTDF Service was in the midst of launching in its first year. And then I ended up going back to Guatemala for a project. And Brett, I was in my favorite lake in the world. There's a place called Lake Atitlan in Guatemala, a really large lake with many sort of small towns and communities. And this is one night I was sitting lakeside overlooking the lake, full moon out, grabbing dinner as sort of a street side vendor, and just sort of thinking. I was in a reflective stage in my life, and then that certainly in that year. And as I'm sitting and eating, this man comes to the same street food vendor that I was at with his daughter, and they sit down, they start ordering the food, and he spoke a language that is not Spanish. He spoke a language called Quiche, which is a Spanish language, which is a Mayan language, indigenous language. His daughter spoke both. I speak English and just a little bit of Spanish. I like to say just enough to be dangerous. So, but we get into this conversation. It's pretty unique, and out of nowhere, in the midst of this conversation, he finds out I'm a physical therapist. And when he found out I was a physical therapist, his face just lit up in excitement. And I said to myself, I wish everybody lit up like this when they found out I was a physical therapist. But it was a few moments later that I realized why. The father wasn't just traveling with his daughter, he was traveling with her mother, his wife. And right before the trip, or the front end of the trip, she had wrenched up her knee really bad. And as they were traveling, they couldn't find anywhere that she could get treated or anywhere to go to. And she was essentially bedridden as they were traveling throughout the country. They were local to the country, and we're chopping, we're eating, and he's calling by my name at this point. So he goes, he feels that, or through translation, do you mind coming up to the hotel to come see my wife and come treat my wife? And of course I said, of course. So I went up, did an assessment, started doing some treatments and things of that nature. Well, there's mobilizations of the knee, or showing her exercises, teaching her how to progress for the days to come, how to manage inflammation and pain. how to load her leg, things of that nature. And I told them to look me up as they can because I was going back to another project in a place called Esquipulas. We hugged. It may have been some tears, and we said goodbye.
Mm.
But during the rest of that day and the days to come, Brett, I couldn't get them off my mind. Because it's a fun story to sort of recite in certain ways, has an art to it. But central to that story is that that woman's husband and daughter had to randomly bump into me on a street side in San Pedro Lago de Atitlan, to have a healthcare clinician engage with her and touch her hurts and ask her where does it hurt and how does it hurt, and promise her we're going to do our best to figure out why. And I realized that's a pain point. That's a problem, because the way I think about movement health, to talk about the nonprofit Move Together, movement is one of the oldest and closest essentials in our lives. It's with us from the very beginning of our existence and throughout. And it really guides how we engage with the world, how we experience the world, how the world experiences us, how we run, how we play, how we dodge, how we love, how we live, And I like to think that we all have a unique movement signature and movement rhythm and movement form of expression. So what becomes so wonderful is that when we're able to refine our expression and maximize our capacity of movement, we're able to maximize our life. And I think that's a humanistic right. So that became the foundation of what became Move Together, Movamino Juntos, and
Mm.
the name sort of came. Any sort of work that we do, always ask three questions when we're going to a community, whether it's Brooklyn or Bolivia. One first question is, are we welcome, in this community? And make sure you listen to the answer, and don't proceed until you get an affirmative. The second question is really asking and observing, but asking the people who live in said community that you're thinking of doing a project. And I'll explain what a type of project is that we do, that you think to do a project. What do you see as some of the opportunities and the challenges in your community? And what are the opportunities in your community and the challenges, and listen to that answer. And question number three is, what do you see as some of the ways to overcome those challenges and fulfill the opportunities? Listen to the community members in the community. And then certainly as an organization, we'll bring ideas, hopefully that are good, to effectuate positive change. And then we'll move together to try to create sustainable change in a positive way. And now we have three programs in our organization Move Together. We have PT Day of Service, which came first 1 year earlier. It's now one of the programs of the organization Move Together. We have a program called the Clinic Development Program, in which we work with community leaders and municipality leaders to actually set up sustainable PT clinics that exist when we're not there, that not depending us to coming back and forth. We set up models, financial models, that they could orient what they sustain and scale themselves throughout the year and throughout the years, to be treated by local PTs and local PT students throughout the year in their community. And one of our flagship ones, we did a project with the second most populous city in Guatemala, and they've seen tens and tens and tens of thousands of patients over the last many years. And the last program is a teaching program, collaborative learning program, in which we teach and we learn from and teach local students and PT. So our mission currently is to expand the quantity and the quality of movement health around the corner and around the world.
Mm. Yeah, that's amazing. And you think of, I don't want to jump ahead here, but you talk about mobility and how we all have our kind of unique movements. And that's something that, for me, that I've started to learn a lot from a teaching concept, right? In lacrosse, if I'm talking lacrosse right now, like, if I'm teaching a kid how to shoot, right? I don't want to robotically tell them how they need to do it. I want them to work within their bodily movements, right? Because we all have unique patterns. There's certain pieces of it that you want to be true, this be there, but it just kind of triggered in my head when you said that, because it's something that's really changed the way I think about teaching, is like having that in mind, of knowing that, like, one, like, we're not going to run the same, we're not going to dodge the same, right? But you're talking about how we move together in all different patterns, whether it's just everyday life or sports. And I just find that to be so kind of, you know, important, and to think about, like, when you are helping people, with health, or if I'm teaching someone with lacrosse, like, I always kind of really want to stress that. And it seems like from your perspective, it's, that's kind of the foundation of, your whole kind of movement, which is unbelievable. So, and
Hmm.
you think, so like what you're doing with PT that's all like early, that's like, after, maybe you're your aftercare, you're getting care for when you're injured. Would you say that like fit health is more for like, like how we, diving in deeper with our health, before that, piece of it, right? You got the before and after physical activity, right? The fit is maybe, how I'm exploring my body movements to, to be better, right? And then the PT part of it is how can I, get better, when I am hurt, right? Is that how you would kind of,
Yeah.
discuss those two pieces of it?
Yeah, I'll explain fit. I want to respond to some of what you said because I love it and you captured it so well. And I think we can have these hats on as coaches, which I've had the chance to do over the years, and seeing you be the amazing coach you are, and just have the amazing coaching knowledge, and that also as a healthcare clinician, it's understanding. Again, we all have our unique style, right, of how we move, and then certain sports have certain principles that are true, and then be compounding over time. What becomes beautiful is the integration of the two,
Hmm.
right? Not try to fit somebody in the mold. What's their natural rhythm, and what are some truisms and some first principles in the sport, and get that chemical reaction together to see what is yielded in the human, so to speak, and as a sense of freedom and purpose and attention and all that. So I
Hmm.
love that. One of the things I love about lacrosse, and then one of the things if I talk to somebody about lacrosse, one of the things I say, you can be any size, shape, even speed in many ways, and you could excel. I
Hmm.
think about some of our teammates. One of my favorite players that we ever played with was Jeff Zawicki. He wasn't the fastest, certainly wasn't the tallest and all that, but from expressing through his body and playing the angles and how he leaned and his vision, he was one of the best players that we ever played with and so much fun to watch. So you could be a 6'4", just bull, so to speak. You could be a 5'5", legitimately, and anything in between. And lacrosse really does have a home for you, so to speak, and that legitimately is one of my favorite things about the sport.
And I think, talking about Jeff Sawicki, did you guys ever discuss that somersault he did in the afternoon?
Is rolling in our game.
Just-
Jeez.
that was a great moment.
Yeah, that was a
But you're
great.
right. I mean, like it was just he was such a like a his talent was unique to him, and it was just it made him it's what made him great. And you could look at a lot of guys like that too. Before us and after us, and within us too. So I think that's just as as someone who's trying to like always think about how I can be better in that sense. It's something that I've really kind of taken on to try to learn about more, and how I can, map it out when I'm coaching with like just a single kid versus like how I can map it out when I'm coaching with like a bunch of kids, right? Because you can't get them all the same attention. But I love it though. I mean, I didn't want to divert away from your story because it's so beautiful. But
No, I
um,
love that. I love that. And to click on it for just another moment, it's a great message for kids. You don't have to try to be anybody else. There's only one you.
mhm,
Again, whatever size or shape or attributes you have, there's only one of you, and nobody else has that. What is that unique edge you're going to find? What are you going to hone in? Solidify the fundamentals and what angle? Whether you're a little bit smaller, can you duck under people? You're a little bit taller, can you lean into people? What is it and use it? And that sort of freedom and that encouragement that is just true, I think makes the game more enjoyable. Now you're on the venture of writing your story through how you move, how you run, how you dodge, how you check, how you hustle. That becomes the fun of the sport.
yeah, and I think like with younger kids too, especially at the youth level, like sometimes I think we take it too far out of control. We want to keep it fun, right? But I always express to the kids, hey, just be your best. Don't be about worry about being the best. Be
Mhm.
your best, right? Like if you can be your best, as an individual that day, you'll be fine, right?
Yeah.
But if you're worried about, being the best one out there every day, right, then you're gonna hit some roadblocks and mentally, that could affect your mental game too with it all. Like just focus on what you can do being the best of yourself. And I think that's, a way that we can really, encourage more confidence, with young athletes too. A lot of colleges, we'll have a quote like be the best, right? You as a team, you want to be the best, right? You want to be the best and beat the best. But from an individual standpoint, I think a good mindset is to be your best, right? Because then you just don't compare yourself to anyone else. Just like you're saying, like you are you.
No,
Yeah.
I love that. To answer your question about fit health, fit stands for functional fitness and integrated therapeutic training. So it's spelled differently, FFITT, because it means something a little bit different. Fitness, again, to go on that sort of unique journey, is writing, is discerning what fitness means to you according to best practice and best principle, but also what it means to you, and just going along that journey. And sort of what I've seen over the years, and the focus, we work a lot with athletes and runner, that's a salient focus, is that a lot of athletes don't know their potential. I work with a lot of runners. I was working with a few this summer, and this sort of the doing 3D analysis or running analysis, really diving in deep. And what continues to strike me is how people love to understand where they could get better, and then the journey of trying to close the gap. And it wasn't until we came alongside, oh, I didn't realize my cadence was like this, or I was pelvic dropping like that, or my arm swing was like that, or I was over pronating like this. Okay, now I know. We don't know our full potential. So our mission statement is to partner with athletes and runners to realize their full potential. Because when you realize your full potential, that's magic is happening, right?
Yeah.
You're tapping into something within, and you're sharing your magic beyond, and that just makes for a better world, right? So to
Hmm.
partner with folks to realize their full potential. And I sort of curated a sort of a way I think about the body. It's sort of unique to the company and influenced by sort of learnings over the years, but I call it the PAC model, PAC, PAC capacity model. P stands for passive capacity. And your passive capacity is your available range in your body. Your ability to move or be moved by internal or external forces, your passive capacity of your body. So where you tight, where is your joints restricted, hip rotation, trunk rotation, arm elevation, things of that nature, things that are important with sport. So looking at that first, passive capacity. The A is active capacity. Your active capacity is your ability to move through your available range, right? So muscle initiation, muscle strength, muscle endurance, your ability to generate and control force, things of that nature. So that's the conditioning, right? And your C is your choice capacity, how you choose to move. All right, that's the motor control, movement planning, things of that nature. So through our model of fit, we can assess the body through those pillars, through those portals, through those prisms, and based on the findings, based on what we find, curate a path and a plan to help you to maximize your potential in a way that is coherent to your mechanical system, your structure, as well as to your sport. So we've developed right now, we're our main clinic is essentially in Western Massachusetts. So we developed a hybrid program that's a combination of in-person assessments and training and with a digital program. And then we also have curating a plan for runners and as well as lacrosse players, digital program to look at those different things along the pack. Are you tight here? Are you a little bit weak here? Is your balance or your control not as optimal here? We're able to curate a program for you so that that is optimal, so that you can be optimal on the field for practice and for games and beyond. So that's a bit about fit, and we're excited about the
Mm.
journey to come.
To build off the mobility piece of it,
Mhm.
we always would stretch, to feel like we could touch our toes or get loose, get warm. But it was probably about like 8 years ago or 7 or 8 years ago where I read a book called The Supple Leopard, right?
Yeah,
And it was more about joint mobility, right?
yeah,
And how we can, instead of like, finding ways to create more movements, mobility within our joints of our hips, our knees, our elbows, and that'll ultimately help kind of map out, your body controlled body movement versus just like stretching, right? Can I stretch further? Can I reach further? Do you find that to be, kind of true in that sense? And, how would you compare it, like joint mobility to like just strictly like mobility from how far you can touch your toes, how far you get your hands, bring your legs back, all that good stuff that we all do pregame.
yeah. Well, they're not different. Those two things are not orthogonal to each other, but the
Okay.
distinction, in sort of foundational terms, is flexibility versus mobility. That's a
Mm.
functional way to separate it.
Yep.
Flexibility is speaking more to the muscles, right? So stretching your hamstrings or stretching your calves, and there's a place for that. There's sort of the dynamic, engagement, stretching or warming up that you tend to do before sport and before practice, which the research has shown us is better to keep it dynamic and moving and short term and the lengthening of the tissue. There's a longer term stretching that you may hold for longer of some of those tissues, your hamstrings, your calf, your quads, they should do post a sport or post a run, right? So those things are still good, so to speak. Dynamic stretching for flexibility before, long-term after. And then mobility, to your point, becoming a supple leopard by Kelly Starrett. He's a physical therapist as well. And it's really just an amazing mind. And he's really democratized a lot of information for people to use and to be more aware of their body and more connected with their body so they can be more connected with their sport. And yes, he has a ton of information of how to optimize. It goes back to that P part of passive capacity, your available range of motion. A lot of us are existing, not tapping into what a full range of motion is. And it's different from everybody. So there's not this one normative range, but whatever you're optimal and you're full and you're available, are you in a position to tap into it? And many people are not. So Kelly put some different techniques with just using your body and your body weight or some different thick bands to sort of self-mobilize your hips that are super helpful, are super great and super accessible, so to speak, that more and more people to be doing it. And when you take care of your body like this, it elevates your performance and it minimizes your chance for pain or injury. Doesn't eliminate it, of course, but it minimizes it, sort of across the spectrum. And also, if one does tend to get injury, if your body has this resilience, you'll at the very least recover quicker. So the case for all athletes, runners, lacrosse players, other sports, is to be investing in your body so it can be compounding positively, right? It's almost like a vector in space. There's one vector of you doing nothing, in space, and is going like this, going like this. There's another vector of you doing positive good, and over the course of days, weeks, months, years, it's a different body. It's legitimately a different body. So one of the journeys that I'm on with the two different companies that I'm a part of, again, Move Together is a nonprofit, FFITT Health is a company, is to really catalyze well-being, get
Hmm.
people to be more on one end, be more connected to their bodies and to have the tools and the access to that. It's sort of a different realm. The nonprofits area, there's actually just not access. Maybe in some of the sports and some of the areas that we're in, there's oftentimes a different A. There's just not lack of awareness. So filling that gap, those two A's of accessibility and awareness, and they overlap for both groups in different ways. So we can move our best and play our best and love our best and live our best and adventure our best.
Yeah, no, 100%. And I just, talking about injuries a little bit, I know you had brought it up, but, are there common injuries that you see that obviously, like you said, they're not preventable 100%, right? There's a chance you could always get injured no matter how much you prepare your body for it. But are there more injuries? Are there injuries that are more common than others that kind of, are kind of hinting that like, hey, this is where we need to work more on, whether it's like muscular, hamstrings, obviously like, when you roll an ankle, if someone steps on it, maybe that's something that could have been preventative. But, and then building off of that, with injuries, is there a way to like teach young kids and young players a difference between, being sore versus being injured and the long-term risks when you do play through stuff that could really gradually, get worse over time? That's a kind of a loaded question, but it's just
Yeah,
it's kind of
super.
building in my mind as we're talking about it.
Yeah, each sport has their different pockets of injuries, right?
Yeah.
With runners, you may hear the traditional umbrella term of runner's knee, or what's called patellofemoral syndrome. You may get Achilles tendonitis, you may get some back strains and things of that nature. You may get shin splints. With lacrosse, and maybe some bruising and some traumas or some sort of close kinetic chain ligament ACL type issues, depending on how you turn or you cut and things of that nature. So each sport, depending on the sport, football has its own thing, with wrestling will have its own thing, have their more common injuries,
Hmm.
and that's just a reality. We've seen them, or we could probably predict some of them. And then going back to that PAC model, even focusing on runners, where I work with a lot of runners, based on where you're tight, where you're weak, and what's within the model and beyond the model, how you move, how you do your sport, how you run, get people just watching the run. It's a good explainer of symptoms of pain or performance, and it's a predictor of pain or performance. So it's important, being aware,
Hmm.
based on what your pack capacity is, call it pack capacity, what your passive, your active, your choices, and based on how you are in your sport, how you do your sport, it will explain to me your pain and performance, and it'll help me anticipate potential pain and performance in the future. So that's why this stuff's important. And to go into that, to your second part of your question, yeah, it's important for athletes to listen to their body. That's what I like to tell them. Just be aware and listen to your body. That's first principle. Does something feel off? Does something feel different? Is something in the tissue versus is something in the joint? Is something in the muscle belly or closer to the end of the muscles? Or something in the joint space and things of that nature. So listening to your body and the early signals that it sends you, because it'll send you signals. If you ignore it, it'll start desensitizing to those signals. It'll send you signals and address it. So there's always this balance of playing tough and being tough and going through. And that's how we are, right? That's the gorillas, right? The school of the hard knocks. So
Oh yeah.
you're gonna chop wood and work through some things while also thinking long term. This thing that I'm feeling, will it hinder me of being alongside my teammates and during the playoffs or next year or next year? If it's not going away, if something fills up, you need to address it. So playing sports, being an athlete, listening to your body, you get the chance to get to signal to noise ratio, the difference between something that is soreness versus something that is serious, so to speak.
Mm. And like from from a coach's perspective, whether, I don't know if there's a specific age you think like that, this stuff really needs to start. Obviously, kids grow at all different phases, right? Some kids, start sprouting up at 10, some like me take till you're 16, right? Like I was a late bloomer, but like, is there a certain point, an age and like from a coaching perspective where coaches can try to integrate this or give, help kids with their mobility and kind of this feeling of like taking care of their body in that sense. Like we all will do stretching, but like I guess I'm trying to say is there a certain point where a coach can like build it into a practice or a on or off field routine for their for their players or individuals, to help them, right, to help them almost be in that phase of like taking their body ahead of time to limit the occurrences of potential injuries.
Yeah, not only the answer is yes, I think it's needed. I
Hmm.
think it's needed. There's in the soccer space, there's more and more of these, I forget the name of it, but there's more of these sort of international programs, mobility and strengthening to help soccer athletes that do Nordic hamstring curls and other things, these sort of stretching and hamstring conditioning activities that I've seen to sort of build resilience within players. I think we need more of those. I have some different resources, maybe one of those things that sort of share on your platform and some others, to get coaches to be aware. But yes, not only the answer is yes, it's needed. This doesn't mean having kids. We're not talking about having them do crazy bench press at 11. No, passive capacity against it's just the mobility work, light work. It doesn't have to be crazy. It could be 2 minutes a day, 3 minutes a day, getting this flossing within the body. The active capacity could just be some light intentional core work. Is it a plank? Is it this? Is it that? Again, a minute or two a day or every other day. The choice capacity, is it working on balance? Is it working on sort of intrinsic doming of your foot? Is it working some certain, of course, you could go into the skill specific things, but focus on the capacity. I think we need to start thinking about how could we compound things, have these our athletes be compounding positively, not doing too much, but also not doing too little, is a sweet spot. So the answer, I think coaches, parents, athletes of all ages, and is different for everybody. The program for the rising high school senior may be different from the seventh grader,
Hmm.
in timing and intensity and type and all that stuff. And that's okay, right? But the end in mind, you always think about what are you solving for? You're solving to readying your body to practice and perform. One of the good things with Kelly and the becoming a supple leopard, the whole idea of that supple leopard, we talk about leopards always have this readiness. They don't have to stretch, just out of nowhere they could take off. So that's the idea behind his book. And same thing for all of us as athletes, have this readiness and this resilience in our system.
Yeah, no, that's great. And I obviously don't want to take too much of your time here, but one of the questions that I think, just based off our conversation, that could really, be for anybody, whether they're a coach or run a business, whatever it may be. But I mean, you've built organizations that run all over the world, right? You're part of them, which takes like a lot of leadership. And like I said, you can answer this however you want, but like what lessons have you taken from what you've done? where that you think that like a coach or someone who's, or even a player if you want for that matter, but somebody who's just, kind of a leader in that front, what lessons can they take and try to implement into their own in lives to build a strong and efficient team? Because I think what you've done is unbelievable.
Great. Thank you for that, for sharing that, and thank you for the question. As you were saying, the early part of the question, what comes to mind as I think about, let's say, entrepreneurship, it's it's really having a great discernment of what you're solving for. The mission, what's the challenge, what's the problem that you're solving for all the time in the business world, what's the mission? Because there's going to be ups and downs, there's going to be lefts and rights, there's going to be new strategies and ways and technology, but what stays pretty constant and relatively constant is a problem, that they're trying to heal, they're trying to make better. So if you really understand that, you can really love that, you can really stay purposeful about that, fall asleep thinking about it and wake up thinking about it. That for me, I've seen has solved much. And then the other thing that's been important for much, and the other thing is a lot of business is solving problems with people that you love, that you're solving problems with people that you love solving problems with, or you love doing things with, and it's a lot of it.
Hmm.
So I'm a quote guy. I could throw 20 quotes at you, and I could probably pull up some business quotes to you right now. But those are two first principles. Really know your passions, know the passion, know the problem you're trying to solve for, and try to do the mission. With those who you care about and those who you like doing it with. There's a quote from some entrepreneur. I love it. And if you can't have this in your business, that's great. He goes, I'm interested in fellowship, right? Fellowship is more than friendship. It's friendship along the journey. And I think if you could have that with others along the journey, that's what it's all about. So that's my answer to that. And I think we could all bring that. So if it's an athlete, really do some deep reflections. What about this do you love? What about lacrosse do you enjoy? Playing with your friends, moving around, sharpening your craft. Coaches, what do you enjoy? Is it seeing the transformation of the kid in front of you who came in on day one and who in front of your very eyes is transforming? And if the end in mind is transformation, that should guide how you're engaging with them. Are you pouring love into them? Are you calling forth the best of them? Are you doing what is best for them? So to speak? Are you aiming at them and engaging with them in a way that speaks to them, and treating everybody fairly? Because if you know what you're solving for, that becomes your North Star and it will guide how you are, how you do, how you be. So I'll land that question there. And there's maybe an anecdote that I'll share that has to do with play that I think maybe will be fitting to land on the back
Hmm.
end. So, but I'll pause before if you have anything else.
No, I mean that's awesome. I mean that's a great answer, and that was kind of just having the conversation, just learning about your journey and kind of what you're doing and how we can tie it into you know what others are doing today, whether it's coaches, just overall health and physical therapy. I think like it's such a great thing. So I love, if you want to share some extra stuff, I mean, I'm all for it. And I've been trying to bounce my questions off here based off your, how we've
Yeah.
been flowing. But yeah, I mean, I've really enjoyed it though.
Yeah, I'll share one more thing. It has to do with play, and this is a podcast about sport and play, and well, this also has to do with life. But before I say that, before I land with that, it's been great sharing time with you, Brett. One of my close friends in my life, and we're always joking around. We have that line that as you get older, is it's good to know people who you knew when you were young, who knew you
Hmm.
when you were young. And you've known me since 17. You're always a year or two older, but you've known me since 17. We came in together freshman year
Yeah,
in the fall of 2003. We wrapped up 2007, and it was a great adventure with you, myself, our teammates, others in our class, the Dennis Wellens, the Andrew Rex, the Matt Carroll, the Patrick Lomans, the Daniel Whipples, and such, the Matt Carrolls. I hope I'm not missing anybody here.
Sam Moody.
Sam Moody, of course, Sam Moody, and others that we
Yeah,
also started with Gongus and
yeah.
such. So
Hundo.
Tundo, yes, my main man Tundo. I love him. I was telling my wife, it was one of my favorite humans ever. It still is.
I literally was just having a conversation with someone about him this past weekend. So it's hilarious.
Matty T, and
Yeah.
had some of my favorite conversations with another person with him. So the last thing
Yeah.
I'll share, it's it comes from like traveling around the world, and it's I think it's maybe it's on my heart now, and I think it'll be on my heart through the years, and maybe it'll be something good for younger people to think about as well. So Brett, I mentioned one of the countries that I stopped in was China. I was in China for about 16 days when I was in a trip around the world in 2015. I did eight days in Shanghai and 8 days in Beijing, and I was doing different things, teaching, treating, et cetera, et cetera. While I was in Shanghai, I was staying in this very tall sort of hotel, and they had their restaurant and their cafeteria on the top floor. So this one morning, I decided to have breakfast. So I take the elevator up to the top floor of this tall building to have breakfast, enjoy this beautiful panoramic view. And then afterwards, I decide to walk down to my room, which was on the 13th floor. So Brett, just visualizing me trotting down the stairs after breakfast, just like this, trotting down the stairwell. And out of nowhere, God, but as I was going down the stairs, I have this out of nowhere, I get this compelling feeling and force to just stop right where I was in the staircase. And when I got that feeling and that force to stop in the staircase, I did. And I pause and I look up. And right ahead of me is this large set of windows. And yonder is a schoolyard. And in the schoolyard, about 30 or 40 kids, 7 year olds, 8 year olds, 9 year olds. And they were just running and jumping and skipping and pulling and twisting and tackling and flipping, just all sorts of uninhibited motion. What they were doing is they were playing. They were playing, and it was poetic. It was poetry in motion, and I was captivated for some moments, maybe more. But at the end of those moments of captivation, a multitude of thoughts came crashing down. The first thought that I had is that as we get older, not universally, not across the board, not everybody, but as we get older, we stop playing a little bit. We hesitate before we smile, we pause before we sing, and before we dance. And I thought about what two people said, right? In that stairwell, and then throughout that day, what two people said. I thought about what Dante says in the Divine Comedy, La Commedia. He has a quote that goes, I woke in the middle of my life in a dark wood, and the true way was wholly lost. I awoke in the middle of my life in a dark wood, and the true way was wholly lost. When I thought about that then, when I think about that now, I said, that's what the midlife crisis must be like, right? Waking up at 40 or 50 or 60 and realizing you hadn't done the things that you could have done or
Yeah.
would have done or should have done if only you pursue the things in your heart and you pursue the things in your soul. Thought about this Irish poet who I enjoy very much. His name is David White. He has this quote that goes, how do you know that you're on your own path? You can't see where it's going. That's how you know. Or how do you know that you're doing something radical? The path disappears. That's
Yeah.
how you know. So as I was in the stairwell and the staircase in China, these three sort of ideas, what became lessons for me, were starting to arise. The first idea is that we all have things that we're passionate about and purposeful about. Passion is that fire. Passion means to suffer, right? It actually means to suffer. So passion is about that thing that we're willing to suffer through to get to where we want to go or to become who we dare or aspire to become. That it burns hot. We all have things that we're purposeful about, and purpose is very foundational. The thing that we fall asleep thinking about and wake up thinking about, tying back to that question about entrepreneurship and leader and building and such. And what happens in life, which is okay, that it may shake monthly, it may shake weekly here and there. What becomes so important is waking up each day, each and every day, knowing your daily joy and pursuing it each and every day. That was the first of three thoughts that I had. The second thought that I had was to live life with intention. You see somebody in front of you, you want to say hello to, you walk up to that person and say hello. You think you're the best person for the job. You show the decision maker, he or she, why you may be, why you are. I'm approaching 40 next month in November by God's grace. And
Welcome to the club.
yeah, almost there by goodness grace, by God's grace. What I've seen in my years, my almost 40 years, is that opportunities don't come around twice in the same form. So when an opportunity comes across in a form that speaks to you, whether you're an athlete, a coach, or a professional, whoever that speaks to you, you have to grab it by its hair tufts, right? It's fourth and inches. You got to go for it. Stella Adler had this great quote. She studied under Stanislavski. She taught Marlon Brando and many other great actors. She has a quote that goes, if you don't treat every practice like you're playing Hamlet, every time you're playing Hamlet, it'll be just like a practice, don't you see? And the way that I interpret it, like be all in the ground ball drills, right? And the passing drills and such. And then the third and final one that I think is a point of it all, and I think may be fitting for this conversation. There's this quote attributed to Oliver Wendell Holmes. She has a quote that goes, we don't stop playing because we get older. we get older because we stop playing. And so as much as we can, I think every day, whether it's lacrosse or running or whatever sport, or whether it's through our work, to do our best to play every day.
100% agree. 100%. That was beautiful, folks. That's a lot of knowledge, and I'm gonna take that a lot with me there. So I love seeing your posts and your poems that you post on social. So keep that up too. I'm not smart enough to memorize them, but I always do look back at them,
No, well, it's great
I'm
sharing.
working on that though.
It was great sharing this space with you, Brett.
Yeah,
With you, I'm so glad of the space that you're building in our sport, and in the sport ecosystem overall. I think you're doing it in the absolute best ways. But it's about the kid and the growth and the history of the game and the beauty of the game. So I love it, and I'm thankful that you're doing what you do. So thanks, my good man.
thank you.